Teachers, homeschool moms, or homeschool dads. I'm the one that shoots again with Too Cute Classrooms, and today we're going to talk about 5 ways in which you can increase your students' test scores. Let us jump right into it. Number 1, be sure that you're teaching your students how to find the main idea of a text. The most tested item on your state test, I don't care where you are, is going to be what is the main idea, or what is the central idea. Central idea, main idea, same thing. Make sure your students understand how they can find the main idea. And we know we do this by looking at our title. We do this by reading our text, looking at the first sentence after in the first paragraph, and we be sure that we're emphasizing the importance of those things. Teach your students to read the whole passage and then come back and look at it and say, hey, what's the overall message of this? This is one way that we're teaching our students how to look for the main idea. And once they find that main idea, teach them that they have to start thinking like a lawyer. Think like, hey, if I had to go to court and I had to justify what I just said, what sentences, what else could I use to back up what I chose as the main idea? So make sure you're doing this. The second thing you can do is make sure that they understand how to use context clues. Because even if they don't know the vocabulary, even if they're making an educated guess about a lot of things, if they can use context clues, that means then they can stop, look at what they read, look at the passages, look at the text surrounding it, and then they can go from there to come up with the meaning of what they read or the meaning of any unknown words. So, number 1, make sure that they can find the main idea and justify it. And again, the second thing we want to be emphasizing with our students is using those context clues, looking at the surrounding passages, looking at the surrounding sentences, and then being able to infer or figure out or make an educated guess about what is being talked about. Repetition, repetition, repetition. What do I mean by repetition? That means repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Statistics have shown things become a habit for us when we do them at least 20 times. So what does that mean for you as a teacher? It means that your students need to be continuously exposed to testing items. That means that your homework that you send home with your students should be focused on testing standards. It should be things that you've covered in class. It should not be very long, but they should be focused on testing standards. Your exit tickets, your bell ringers should be focused on testing standards. Yes, go over your testing standards during class, but we don't want to bore our students to death with just testing standards. But whatever we do, we want to make sure at some point that we're focusing on those testing standards. This is another thing that's going to really impact your students' test scores, is that they've been exposed to homework, that they've been exposed to classwork, they've been exposed to weekly tests or benchmark tests that look just like the tests they're going to see on the state test. It's like, you know, my favorite equivalence, it's like playing basketball. You can't expect your students to know how to do something if they haven't practiced on it. You can't expect your players, if you're a coach, to know how to execute a play if they haven't practiced on it. And I don't mean one time. You need to go over it and over it and over it again. They call those basketball drills. So with teaching and testing, we call these classroom drills. We call these testing drills. You don't have to call them that. You can just make it something fun, something students will enjoy. But be sure that you are repeating. Never underestimate the power of vocabulary. Vocabulary is extremely important when getting your students' test scores up, because if they can't understand the test, then how can they pass the test? They need to understand what they're being asked to do, and they need to understand that academic vocabulary. So as a teacher, you need to make sure that you're emphasizing vocabulary. Make sure that you're using new words. And when you give them words, don't just give them a list of words, have them go home and look up the definitions and never use them again. Don't give them an assignment that says, use this word in a sentence. No, when we're talking about using vocabulary, we're talking about using these words on a daily, no less than a weekly basis. That every day you're exposing these students to these words, that they have activities in class that are centered around these words, that they have homework that uses these words. if you're setting up your centers, if you are elementary or upper middle school and you still do centers and you do some type of rotation, or even when they get a little older and you're doing teachers tables or teacher centers, and even with your high school students, make sure they're exposed to these words over and over again. So what I would tell my high school teachers are that you focus on those SAT and ACT words, those highly tested words, and there are ways to get those lists. You can look online and pull those lists off. Make sure you make these your target words and you focus in on those. This is how you do the vocabulary to get your test scores up. And last but not least, make sure that your homework, your bell rings, and your exit tickets are all focused around your tested standards. And I know it can get a little boring talking about testing, but you want your students to be comfortable with that test when they see it. They don't need to be shocked. They need to be comfortable with it. Again, back to my basketball example, when they get to the state playoffs or the big championship game, they don't need to be shocked. They need to have been exposed to those drills. They need to have practice. And so your students need to have practice on the items that will be tested on their state test. So again, this was Wanda Shields with 2Q Classrooms, giving you some quick testing tips and hacks. We were talking about ways in which we can increase our students' test scores. And so before you go any further, be sure to give this video a like, a thumbs up, and to follow me and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.